So, just approaching the end of May, we've had a little bit of rain. So there's a little bit more moisture gone into the ground. But taking the opportunity while I'm doing a bit of work here to go over the terracing, terraformation. How to turn a slope with its associated water runoff, challenging situation if you want to grow anything really, terracing it, turning it into steps, therefore creating flat areas you can plant and grow on, but also it holds the water. The water doesn't run off, it stays in situ and gets a chance to soak in deeper instead of running off. The ground here gets really hard with the baking it gets in the summer and the subsequent die-off of the little plants that come back every spring. The ground turns into dust and hard-caked clay. This is a clay shale. I think it's slightly metamorphic, i.e. at some point it's been altered by heat. It's very soft overall, but you get this is the actual living rock here that I'm kicking. This isn't spoil that's been laid down. And as you see here, again in the living rock, you get these harder, tougher, harder than concrete, these actual pieces here. This is a nodule. You occasionally find these. I guess this is where maybe heat is concentrated. Perhaps, but you can see the rock's discoloured. Anyway, so terracing. At the moment here, I'm just removing this useless nub here. I don't use that for anything. I was thinking I was going to use it so I could stand on it to access the bed here, but I can access that bed just fine without having to stand on a cliffside. So I'm going to finish the terracing here. This needs to be built up a bit now with more earth and debris put behind. This is the living hill. This is living rock. This is the living slope. And as you can see, I've been chewing it away with my enshada, which is a little bit like a spade crossed with a pick, and it's absolutely brilliant tool. I've made a heavy duty one with a welded steel tube handle on it with a slight hook on it, which is really good for the technique when you're hacking away and pulling towards you. It just gives you that extra little bit of leverage. It's an interesting tool, but they do tend to take a lot of wear. I've welded a spine on the back of it that I do need to I need to upgrade my welding a little bit there, I think, but the spine to give it rigidity like the one on the front, because that was actually damaged and it was starting to bend and break. I do need to reinforce that more still. It's not perfect, but it's a very strong tool. And so the technique, as I'm hacking away, this is living rock and clay mixture. It's kind of hard going, but you get a steady pace. Try not to be a blunt jackhammer, but more like a surgeon with a heavy tool. It's a bit of hill dentistry. And we start to remove like this, gradually, but it does come. Now all this spoil that I'm creating here, as it comes out, you get pieces like this that are more or less, that's not the hardest kind of lump you get. The strata separates. Again, I think the discoloration is down to the different heating it's got. Anyway, so we use these pieces here, like in the terracing. You can see they come out in all shapes and sizes, and you find a lot of them locally. In fact, not all the stones here are local, because whenever I'm out in the car, of course, I'll bring any stones back that I find. So we've got terrace access. This is kind of like natural steps just cut into the living rock here. Gets us onto the next level. I'm anticipating old age. I might be here as a decrepit old man. I plan on being here till the bitter end. Whether or not that's the case, we don't know. But like I anticipated myself now 30 years back, I'm now anticipating myself probably not that far away, actually, if I find myself with all the with all the traumas the body's had over the years, associated motorcycle accidents and so on and so forth. I have experienced being incapacitated with inflammation of joints and things, legs, knees, I stopped drinking alcohol. And that sort of went away, and then I discovered Silver Method meditation, alpha state, centering. That did away with the rest of my inflammation and autoimmune issues like eczema and what have you. Gone. Cured. They say these things are genetic and they're incurable. Well, that's obviously to sell you snake oils and potions so that you keep having to need treatments. But actually, no. So, meditation and teetotaling notwithstanding, there is a chance you find yourself old and decrepit. So I've been installing ramp access. I'm going to try it out with my mum. She's 87 just. I'm going to bring her down here in the next couple of weeks. I think she'd like to see it, how it's progressed, and we'll see how she gets on with the ramp, because I think steadily, and with the correct handrails, which I can position, well, this ramp here takes us all the way to the top of the hill. This takes us to the farmhouse without having to climb up a single step, right? You know, it's all smooth progression. Nice. But there's also lots and lots of steps. I've put lots of steps in, just so you can, you know, run about, monkey about the place and get on with stuff, like when you have to turn irrigation taps on and off, and what have you, you know, just to make the access brilliant. So I'm putting a little ramp in here to take the pump out of the terrace. All this again, this is all keeping water in the land. This will be a retainer before this one. Before there was just this as the retainer. What's coming off here was going to there. Now it's going to there. That's holding it. A bit like a water battery. Gradually over the hours it you know, sinks in and holds its humidity. As you grow more and more plants and trees and mulch, you put wood chips down, all the things you can do to trap humidity in the ground. And all these oak trees you see here, these azaneras, apparently, well, let's have a look at them, because on their west face they're covered in lichen, because we're about 25 miles from the coast here, 30-35 kilometres depending how the crow decides to fly, but we get a lot of the convectional air movement from the ocean, from the Atlantic, condenses here, and that's why you've got this lichen growing mainly on the northwest side of the tree. Although on this one it's coming all the way around it, really. It's indicative of the amount of moisture, and apparently what's happening here is these trees are absorbing 90 plus % of the water that they obtain throughout the year is from the atmosphere. So I've been told, and this is like listening to people like Jeff Lawton, very interesting chap, permaculture design and how you're optimising your property, your land. This is land that hasn't been terraced or anything, but what I have been doing is collecting all the stones. Whenever I unearth stones, like these ones here, if I'm in this little spot here, I'll get a basket, I'll fill it, I'll put them under the trees, I can harvest them later. This was a stone mine here that I've since harvested, put in the ramp in. But while they're here, these stones, funny enough, because of the temperature of them in the cool of the evening or in the early hours of the morning, depending, water vapour condenses on them. They help to feed the tree in their little way while they're just sitting around waiting to be harvested. Yeah, but this all could do with putting steps or scallops or terraces in. This is an example of a scallop here. It's not a very good one, but you've got you've got a tiny little scallop here with a carob tree, but then you've got it's a sort of like little oasis. It's irrigated. I've put sticks and things there to protect it from being excavated by the chucks, which are very, very industrious in their excavating endeavours, let's say. So yeah, it's all about creating level plains, steps, terraces, terraformation. This hill was a smooth slope all over it 20 odd years ago, and a friend of mine came over, a German guy who's been terracing a property in the Azores, and he basically showed me the come on trucks, he showed me the technique for terraformation, which is basically very, very straightforward. So imagine you're hacking away like this. You've made a little step. This is a step here. I know that this isn't going to erode if you got it too steep and this is flaky, it can undermine itself and you get collapses. I know that because I've created quite a few. But anyway, so obviously as you're hacking out the cliff, you are pulling rocks out. So it's better to have a good supply of rocks. You've got to find how it's going to go and sit in there. You want everything to be sloping back slightly. As you get these slight earth tremors here all the time, everything will then start to settle better into itself. But everything's kind of settling, pointing backwards. So you fill in the gaps a little bit with this. That'll lock it in a bit, right? Okay. Now then, what have we got here? See these long tongy ones, like this. We put that there. Right? And then the weight of what's going onto that locks that, which locks those. Slightly going back, it's, you know, it's a no-brainer really, isn't it? Basic engineering 101, but it's a great technique, very satisfying work actually. And of course you're providing habitat for a lot of the pest elimination team, reptiles, toads, amphibians in general. We get bufo, the common toad is abundant here, a welcome addition. Then we got Pleurodel's wattle, which is a 30 centimetre long giant newt. And we've got a really big one on the property here that I've spotted a couple of times. And I've found them walking about on a rainy evening. We get the European tree frog, whose taxonomy evades me. Again, they turned up here only a couple of years back. About 3 years ago I spotted the first ones there, although I'd heard them calling. We get the marsh frog, which is in English called the marsh frog, a close relative of the edible frog. Again, taxonomy evades me, but we've got those 4 species of amphibians alone that I've identified here. And then you've got obviously you've got these little wall lizards. You get viperine snakes, which are semi-aquatic. I've spotted those here. Ladder snakes. They pretend to be nasty. A very good viper impersonation. You get them here and they hunt about. Geckos, you get a lot of moorish geckos. I need to catch up on my taxonomy here, which I can do. But this is a background ecology, you know, and of course all this, stones with holes between them and earth and all the associated life that it brings in, insects, whatever else, is perfect habitat for these reptiles and amphibians. So that with its moisture holding, moisture retention characteristic, again you're finding that where before it was a completely, 20 years ago this was a completely barren hill. It's all inside a fenced compound. There's about 1.5 acres inside the compound, and it had been given over to the raising of black Iberian pigs, and they were feeding off the acorns of the oak tree that's in the distance there that you can just see. That was a big tree. We've got another one here, another big oak tree. This is on the end of its life though. I've been trimming it back, but it's not coming back. And there's more water on the land now than there has been for years, so I think it's probably just very old, you know. Trees here are deceivingly small for their year because it's quite a hostile environment. The Azineras, especially on slopes like this, given the water retention issues that we've been covering, they don't tend to grow very, very big. But they're very old. So that was the one there. None of these were here. These have all grown. I've got 40 plus little home oaks. They call them Azineras here in Portugal, but they're home oaks in English. They're holly oaks. They've got prickly leaves, and they give edible acorns, which you can bake, make flour out of them and bake with them. They're very good source of carbohydrate. So they're a sustenance-giving tree. You can survive off them. They've all grown from acorns that were probably distributed and buried by the rats we get here, which are basically just kind of like skinhead squirrels. They fulfil the same purpose as squirrels do in Britain or in Europe. The ones places I've been, they climb the trees, they eat the nuts and fruit, and they bury the acorns everywhere. And of course the ones they failed to get back to that have germinated, that didn't get eaten by bugs, which we do get a lot of the weevils in the acorns as well. So these trees provide not only cover and habitat for the creatures that live within their branches, but they provide a hell of a lot of food. The wild pigs love to eat these. Anyway, with this property being fenced in, so goats weren't, because we get obviously goat herds and everything here, without the greys and everything else, I managed to get a lot of these trees coming on. And this is designated as ecological cultural events, which is basically native trees. Most of this property is designated. The planning permission is quite strict here, and that's ecology. So we're adhering to that. You've got a good cover of these trees here. I'm going to be making little terraces in and around and in between, and monopolising on the cover that they provide and growing in between them. Again, irrigating, which will bring them on even more. Yay. And they do give a bit of firewood. So, this is the permaculture food forest. All this is various types of composting bins. Some with bananas and such like growing them already. Trucks are a big part of the composting systems. They're just really good to have around, and they provide food, so they don't get their necks wrung. Even when they stop laying eggs, they're invaluable. They're good workers. They do a lot of work here, and I think they know they're loved. They're respected. You know, I do eat chicken, but these are my friends. You know, they're kind to me. So I'm not going to upset the cosmic order of things, you know, and abuse that. And I have called them Win and Shirley as well, after my grandmother and mother respectively. I think that was a kind of a subconscious precaution against wringing the necks. I obviously wouldn't be able to bring myself to do it, would I? And then look my mum in the eye afterwards. Although I suppose if I served up a leg or two, she wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not going there. Thanks, ladies. You know, I'm very, very grateful for everything you do. They're handsome beasts. They're funny actually. They follow me around everywhere, and they make noises like chimpanzees. And they seem to put syllables and things together. You know, play around with them a bit. You know, and all that, you know. You've got to have some company when you live alone. The dog don't talk too much. Right, so yeah. So we're chipping away there. So we will be planting things here. As you can see, putting the rocks in such a way that they, at the very least, they don't slope forwards. And you just backfill that a little bit, like so. You get the picture, eh? And repeat. And this just goes on. I suppose until you've got until you've got a terraced hill. You know, until you're home and dry. And we're actually nearly there. After years and years of, you know, having a go here and there, I'm putting in intensive time now. So all this will be hacked away soon. I don't see the results, but I'm keeping my lovely little slope in here. There'll be a terrace here. I'm putting terraces in here. We've got some. The acacia tree that I harvested is now composting under there. I'm training the rest of it to grow into a sort of like interesting canopy. We'll have to see. A bit more tweaking and rejigging and fine tuning. More beds and things to do. Yeah, it's just the work of a lifetime, and it'll never be finished. It's a hamster wheel for an eccentric. I don't like to call myself eccentric, but I think this is a healthy way to live. It keeps you engaged, stimulated physically and mentally. This is hard work, but doing it and learning about it has enabled me to branch out into providing a professional service with what I've learned here. People, they like having somebody that can come round and do the gardening, build a wall, paint the house, install irrigation, and, you know, basic odd jobbery and maintenance. It teaches you resourcefulness and survival skills, which is great. We all need that. And it's taught me to be a bit more humble as well. At my advancing years, finding myself back in the classroom, really, learning how little I know. First started getting shown about gardening when I was a very small boy. My grandfather died when I was 9, but I can remember him explaining to me in the greenhouse about topping off tomato shoots and encouraging the plant to grow outwards instead of upwards and give you more fruit, and selective pruning of tomatoes. That stayed with me, man. I had recurring dreams about the house where he used to work, and far bigger impression on me than my engineer father, who was a brilliant man by all accounts, you know. And I do have an interest in engineering. Well, my grandfather was a locomotive train driver, so he did too, but my passion's always been with nature. And when he ended his working career, he became a gardener. And after applying my trade for over 20 years as a professional freelance, let's say, I threw the towel in a couple of years back and became a gardener, maintenance kind of guy. And I don't really need a lot to achieve what I'm doing here, building this farm, because the skills and resources that you pick up along the way give you the knowledge to turn trash into don't be fooled by the state of it. This is a sculpture in progress. It all gets tidied up and finished. This is skeletal at the moment, but yeah, it gives you the knowledge to create value from trash, you know. Yeah, one way to go, but it's great fun. Hamster wheel.